We've got our first big freeze scheduled to roll in the next couple of days, and the temperatures are supposed to get down to 23 Fahrenheit. That's about -5 Celsius. So I figured now would be a good time for a fall update of the entire collection, with a particular focus on looking at frost-sensitive broadleaf evergreens that could be damaged by the upcoming cold. But I'm also going to check in on all of the conifers as well to see how they're doing headed into the winter. Starting with the one section of my collection that's actually not evergreen. There are some deciduous conifers here. First, center screen, we have the bald cypress, Taxodium disticum, and it's already started to get a little bit of its customary yellowish, bronzish, even rusty brown fall color there. And then this little one here in the front is the pond cypress, and you can see some of the interior foliage is also getting that color. And then tucked in behind that, there's already some advanced fall color on the dawn redwood, but the top is still fully green. I guess maybe it changes color from the bottom up. And then let's take a look at a couple of the small trees we have here. This is Abies firma, and this tree was killed back at the top a couple years ago, and luckily it looks like some of the side branches have actually turned up and started to form a new leader here. So I'm going to let that leader take charge. I guess I'll wait and see if either one of these takes winter damage, and then hopefully that will mean that the tree is going more vertical in the future. And then right here I have a small Lijiang spruce, Picea lijiangensis. It's a Chinese native spruce with a little bit of a bluish tint to the foliage. It does very well here in Middle Tennessee. And then let me step back again. I have a huge eastern red cedar. That's our native evergreen here in Middle Tennessee, primary evergreen, so never any questions about its survivability. And then this is the Table Mountain pine, Pinus pungens, native to the southeastern U.S. Doing very well. There's another one of those Table Mountain pines. And then this is the Silver Smoke cultivar of Arizona cypress. I've never grown this one before, so this is going to be the first winter I have it in the ground. And I'm hopeful that it will be just as cold tolerant as the Blue Ice cultivar has proven to be. But I'll have to find out. And then over here is the small spruce from Japan. This is a tiger tail spruce, Picea polita. Did pretty well. It doesn't grow very fast, but it's surviving, and it didn't really take any damage from deer browsing last year, so a great choice if you have deer around, but also super rare. And then this is from Wilson Brothers. This is the black spruce, Picea mariana, the Ario variegata cultivar. So it's supposed to have yellow frosted tips, but mine isn't doing that. And actually I don't even care. I just wanted it for the species. So it actually has really good blue color, which I like even better than golden frosted tips. So it also didn't take any deer damage last year, and looking good going into the fall. No signs of any sort of summer heat stress, even though black spruce is native to much further north growing regions. Now this is on a Norway spruce rootstock, probably, so probably grafted, but crucially the top side has not taken any damage, at least in this first year of growth. Here's a pitch pine, Pinus rigida, and that's in front of this row of gigantic loblolly pines here, which obviously are doing very well. And then down here, looks like a dwarf conifer, but it's not supposed to be, is this Notha is the name of the cultivar. It's a hybrid between two Northeast Asian spruce species. The Yedo spruce from Japan and the Glen spruce from, I guess, maybe far eastern Russia. It hasn't grown very much vertically so far, and I'm sure that has a lot to do with the fact that it was a grafted cutting and not an actual rooted seedling. So we'll see. It'll probably take it a few years to go vertical, but I bet it will. Right now it's getting a little covered by some falling loblolly needles, and that's not a problem. This is a hybrid fir. This is the L'Alto Negri fir, and this was pretty badly damaged by deer browsing last year, so I'm going to protect it this year with a little metal fence around it. But it didn't really need protection during the summertime, so it's not protected yet. That'll be another project I have to get to. But so far, no damage from the summertime. Here's a small oriental spruce. This is the Van Speybrok cultivar that I got from Conifer Kingdom. And it did pretty well this summer. I would say that growth was, I don't know, what is that? 9 inches maybe? So pretty good. Very close to this spruce pine, Pinus glabra, which is kind of growing sideways because of the shading from the loblolly, so don't really know what I'll do about that. Maybe nothing. And then I need to trim a little bit of the spruce pine here because it's encroaching on my Korean fir, Abies koreana, which did lose its leader last winter. And that's I made another video about the many problems with Korean fir, so you can go check that one if you're curious. But the rest of the tree looks good. And then very close to that, the Virginia pine, Pinus virginiana here, also doing good. Might trim it a little. And then here is the blue ice cultivar of Arizona cypress. And there's the blue atlas cedar right there, doing good. Cedrus atlantica, cultivar glauca. And then here are 3 gigantic Berkeyii red cedars. They have not yet taken on their winter purple color. That'll come much later. So for now, they're still kind of a sea green with frosted tips. Okay, on the back side of that planting now, we have the eastern white pine, Pinus strobus. Doing good. Probably put on 2 feet of growth vertical. This summer, I do have 3 leaders happening, but I'm going to wait for a winter to progress and make sure these are not damaged by deer again, and I will eliminate 2 of the leaders and probably leave this middle one here since it already has a little bit of lateral branching. And this was the tree that was damaged the most by a deer last winter, and hopefully it won't take too much damage this winter. We'll see. I may or may not protect it, not sure. And then over here, a tree that was not at all damaged by the deer, even though they tried a couple times, and that is the Japanese plum yew, Cephalotexus harringtonia. This particular specimen may in fact be one of my favorite trees. It's in the top 10 in the whole collection. I think you can see it has such a unique foliage texture there, and I've already made plenty of videos about it, so I won't go on too much about it. The one thing I will say that I've noticed is that it's growing a little bit wider than it is tall at this point. So I think I'm probably okay with that, as long as it keeps making good progress at the leader up here, and it looks like it is. So for now, I'm just going to let it grow like crazy. Not too much to see in this area, but I'll show it just for the sake of completeness. A couple of Norway spruces and a big section of Thuja green giant back there that's doing just fine. Unlike the other side of the yard, there doesn't appear to be any armillaria in this area, so for now, these are safe. More blue ice cultivar, Arizona cypress, is actually on both sides framing the red-tipped leaves of the Clayera. Interesting thing about this, I believe this is the Leanne Clayera, and the leaves are both red when they emerge, and also they kind of turn red when they take a little bit of cold damage. So I think it's stopped growing this winter, and I don't know if it's actually going to turn green or not. It may stay red all winter long and then turn green in the spring when it resumes growth. So they turned red like that because we had a little bit of cold weather that approached freezing but didn't actually reach freezing. And they're a little bit bronze when they emerge, but I don't think I've ever seen them turn red like this before. So even though it is an evergreen, somehow it has a little fall color. And as a reminder, the Leanne cultivar seems to be a little bit more cold hardy than the other cultivars of Clayera that I've tried. Species Turnströmia gymnanthera, and this one was actually purchased at the Cedarwood Nursery for an incredibly low price. I think like $12 or something, but it was obviously much smaller. And in front of that is the Paul Select bluish Norway spruce. Not much to see there. It's doing the same thing it did before. There's my Korean spruce there. And then, let me just stake this up, is my Amherst Fort Yew, cultivar of Japanese yew. And there's the Yunnan spruce. This one's looking pretty good. A little ratty at the bottom, but the top foliage looks good. And before the freeze, this is the boxleaf honeysuckle, Lonicera nitida. It almost looks like it's still putting out new growth. So I'm expecting to see a little foliage freeze damage this winter on this bush. I think there has been for the past couple winters, so won't be surprised there. And here's my Elaeagnus pungens. Those back branches that tried to send up runners have not really leafed out that much, but I bet they will next summer. And the Chihuahuan spruce doing just fine here. And there is the China Boy holly spruce, or so, China Boy hybrid holly, I should say. Got spruce on the mind because there's a spruce there. There's Lijiang spruce. This is the big one I have, looking great. All the foliage has hardened. The Lijiang spruce does that weird thing where it does the main push of growth, and then as the summer progresses it may put out a little bit more. See how there's a clump of buds there? This is where the main spring push of growth ended, and then it grew throughout the summer a little bit more, put out another bud here and a new terminal bud there. So it's kind of weird the way it does that. For example, this is a new bush, and then it midsummer pushed this new in here. So this branch wasn't here in January 2025, and the whole branch grew, and probably about May it stopped growing, and then June, July, August it threw this out to the side there. So incredibly fast growing spruce. You can see the leaders and the branches from the nodes themselves are a lot of growth per season, but then it just adds onto that with a little bit of extra growth in random spots. So really incredible. I really hope that some nursery out there starts to offer this again, because in my opinion this is the preeminent blue spruce for the southeastern US. And this is the Red Bay Persea bourbonia, which has done good over the past couple winters, and since it's not putting on any new growth right now, I'm expecting all of this growth to survive the coming cold snap. Fingers crossed. And I'm going to step back into this little room here to show you some of the trees that I'm healing in. These are things that are going to be planted in the redevelopment areas, and I've just got to get the root balls below the ground for the coming cold so they don't take damage. I've got a little bit more work to do here. First here I have just a plain old Hicks yew, so that's a hybrid. This came as one of those free gifts from Conifer Kingdom, I believe. And then this is a boxwood, actually. I don't have one planted currently. This is Buxus microphylla, so that's the Japanese boxwood, and this is the kind of upright tree form. I forget the name of it. Maybe Jacob's upright or something. I don't know. It's from Nurcard.com if you go out there and look for the one that looks like a little tree. That's this. And then there is a Daphne tengutica. So that's supposed to be the most rugged Daphne. A pretty small specimen here. I think that may have come from Cistus Nursery. And then I have a Cuba japonica. I tried one before and it was killed by the deep freeze of 2022, but I'm going to try again. And then back here is I believe this is a Ruscus. No, it's a Sarcococca ruscifolia. So sweet box, Asian sweet box, and this is supposed to be cold hardy, obviously very shade tolerant. And then let's look way back here. That right there is the Schefflera delavei. So cold hardy Schefflera. This is a small specimen here. It's been kind of tucked away all summer. And then here is, I'm going to plant one more of the of the Daphne-phylum Macropodum here. And this will probably stay in this spot most of the winter and be one of the ones that I plant in the Leland Cypress redevelopment area. And then back here is the Dendropanax trifidus. I already have one in the ground, but I'm going to get another one in there. And this will also go in the Leland Cypress redevelopment area, which you can see back here. See how much redevelopment that Leland Cypress needs? It needs a lot of redevelopment. And of course, redevelopment being a euphemism for chop it down, dig it up, and plant something new. Okay, looking at one of my blue hollies. I think this may be like a blue princess or blue prince, one of the two. Probably blue prince. And then there, it's still blooming right now, just before the freeze. So I'm guessing that will get killed by the freeze, but good news is there's no new growth happening now. And right over here, Incense Cedar has some somewhat tender growth, but I don't really expect that to be damaged too much by the cold. And then I have another huge chunk of evergreens waiting to be planted in the redevelopment areas. As a reminder, why do I buy them and then just heal them in and not plant them? Well, when it comes to rare evergreens, there's always such a limited supply that what you have to do is when you see them, buy them, and then heal them in until you get the chance to plant them. Because waiting to buy them when you're ready to plant means you won't get them. You go back and check again, they're gone. Sometimes even after a day, they'll be gone. So it's such a shame that the nursery industry is, I don't know, what would you call it, super lazy. And they never take the effort to just grow a huge quantity of rare evergreens, because obviously they're in demand. But then again, I guess in their defense, they can't be sure how much demand there is for a rare evergreen, because there's not really an established market. It's really just a niche market of evergreen collectors that go for these sort of things. So maybe it's about the right number, because they want to sell out and not carry a bunch of inventory of rare stuff that no one knows what it is. In any case, my strategy has been to buy first, plant later. And that's why I have some things always getting healed in here. So let's take a look at what we have. First off, back here is another one of those southern bayberries. This is Myrica heterophylla, otherwise known as Morella carolinensis. And then right here, for some reason, when I ordered this Yupon holly from mail order natives, they chopped the top off, which I don't necessarily appreciate, but I'm sure it will regrow. So Yupon holly there, Ilex vomitoria. And then in front here I have the big leaf English laurel. This is the Parkway cultivar of Prunus laurocerasus, purchased from purchased from woodlanders.net, and I think they still have them. I got it because it has almost magnolia type leaves. You can see the size of those, much bigger than a lot of the cherry laurel cultivars you see out there, and I think it can get even bigger than this. And so I just wanted more cherry laurel. And then back here is the, what is that? Psychopsis? Yeah, I forget the name of it. It's a Chinese witch hazel. I'll come back to that one. It's kind of like laying over sideways, but it decided to put on some new growth here late in the season, which was obviously not good. So this will probably take damage during the freeze. And then right here is another one of those red bays, Persea bourbonia, and there's another one tucked in here actually. And then down here I have a conifer waiting to go on the ground. This is the Abies bourmulleriana, so Turkish fir, another type of Turkish fir. Pretty low at this point, but hopefully it'll go vertical after I get it in the ground. And then this is a Torreya. I don't have any Torreyas yet. Torreya grandis. This one obviously was damaged, and then they had to cut that off at the nursery. And both of these came from Juniper Level Botanic Garden / Plant Delights nursery when I was in North Carolina. So those will probably both go in the Thuja Green Giant redevelopment area. And then behind that I have the gardenia. I think this is Summer Snow gardenia cultivar, purchased from WilsonBrothersGardens.com. is supposed to be the most cold hardy gardenia. So we'll give it a test here. It's in a somewhat protected area. Actually, going back to this Chinese witch hazel, I think it's a Psychopsis sinensis is the full Latin name. And that came from, I want to say, either Nurcar or Cam Forest. And I think it's still out there if you want one. And then back here is another species of magnolia from China, evergreen. It is the Magnolia yuanensis. So I have one in the ground already, and this one is just waiting to go in. And then now, this is not healed in. This is actually planted. This is a screenplay holly, a hybrid, Ilex integra and Ilex latifolia. So this is one of the least cold hardy hollies in my entire collection. Has pretty neat foliage there, barely serrated on the edges. You can see very small subtle serrations there. And then obviously it can be a fast grower because it's thrown up a ton of growth. I will get rid of one of these leaders here. Those just kind of blasted up over the summertime, but this new foliage right here that came out relatively recently, I'm fully expecting this to take damage from some sort of freeze this winter. If not this one, then another one. And then behind that, another holly, Dahoon holly, Ilex cassine, has also been putting on some late season growth. Throughout the year, it was kind of playing cat and mouse with the two-banded leafhopper, which did a lot of damage to the foliage here. You can see right there the yellowing and spots. This is all caused by damage from the leafhopper bug. And I didn't even really know about this till this summer when I came back and started looking at this tree and saw the leafhoppers. I said, oh, that's funny. But I never knew until I read about it that they actually cause the damage. So when I found that out, I started flicking them off. So maybe next summer there won't be as much damage. But they kind of were mainly there early summer and then went away, and then I saw them again and flicked them off. So I'm going to be a little bit more watchful next summer, but eventually when the tree gets really tall, I won't be able to get to them at all. So I mainly haven't been doing too much because I want my trees to be mostly self-sufficient. And I think it is. I think it basically outgrows the leafhopper. And one downside is it does have some of this late season growth that will probably be scorched by the cold. Okay, back to the plants I have healed in there. Here's my old favorite, Elysium barbiflorum. I'm going to plant another one of those. And then here is Prunus caroliniana. That needs to go in the ground. And then now, this is not healed in, this is planted. This is Cyrilla racemiflora, swamp TT. Has put on a lot of growth this summer. And I'm going to be very curious to see how it tolerates the winter cold. Luckily, no late season growth, so it's a very disciplined evergreen. And with a bit of luck, most of this foliage will survive the winter. And even a little bit of last year's foliage is still left here down at the bottom, although it's looking pretty old. Okay, more stuff that needs to be planted that got healed in. I'm about to heal in this Pyracantha coccinea here. I believe this is the Yukon Bell cultivar. These things are so rugged, so fast growing, but they're very high maintenance. You really have to stay on top of the trimming to get them to do what you want them to do. And then over here, I have an Edith Bogue magnolia right there. It's going to go in the ground at some point. And this is right next to it, another magnolia. You can see the leaves here. I believe this is the Green Shadow cultivar of Magnolia virginiana. And now underneath that, I have yet another Schefflera delavei. This one's larger. And then here is the Elysium henryi and Agarista populifolia. Over here is the Areobatria japonica loquat. Here's another Elysium lanceolatum right here. And back here is the Helwingia omiensis. And then, what else? Down here I have Texas floridana tucked in there. And then this is the Itea ilicifolia right here. And I believe that's it for this section here. So a lot of stuff to get in the ground, but it should be safe here, healed in below ground level. These are the van der Wolf Pyramid limber pines, and like all pines really, but especially white pines, they put on a pretty impressive show in the winter when the old needles drop, turn yellow and drop off. So that's what's happening here in the interior. It's not a problem, it's just a normal part of the pine growing process. So that one's looking good, and there's another one behind it, also looking good. And then tucked back in here I have another incense cedar, Calycedrus decurrens, trying its best to outgrow these hollies in front of it. And here's a holly right here. This is the Dragon Lady holly, hybrid of Ilex aquifolium and Ilex perniae. It's done a lot of growth this year, and it's still doing a little bit of growth. This is new growth right here, which will probably get scorched. And then another holly next to that. This is the oak leaf holly. They will probably also take some damage on this newer foliage back here. And then another holly. Foster's holly is not putting on new growth, and I don't expect there to be any damage there. And the Christmas jewel holly may take some damage because of some late season growth here. Right there. Overall, looking pretty good. Nothing new to say about the Japanese umbrella pine here. And here's another holly. This is the inkberry holly, Ilex glabra. It's not really putting on new growth, so should be fine. Behind that is the loquat, another loquat. This is Areobotrya japonica again. It did put on some late season growth, but it seems to be hardening up pretty well. So I'm hopeful that this lighter growth at the top will be tough enough to withstand the cold. For sure this darker green growth at the bottom will be fine. And then behind that is the Carolina laurel, Prunus caroliniana. Putting on a little new growth at some of the tips, but that's fine if that foliage gets damaged. Blue Atlas cedar here, here's another one, looking very good. Obviously it's finished growing for the year. There's the growing tip. Yep, it's finished. Here's another spruce pine back here. Kind of hard to get the whole thing in the scene, but one thing I want to highlight about the spruce pine is you see that black spot on the ground there? That's left over from Armillaria mushrooms. And then I think there's another one over here. Yep, in that area. So definitely this spruce pine is in contact with the Armillaria, and that could explain some of the unusual curved branching I've seen. So we'll have to wait and see. Look at how this branch right here just kind of curves. That's not normal, and this one curves down, and all kinds of weird stuff going on. So either it's going to die or it's going to survive and look crazy, which would also be kind of cool, but this is a real-time trial. You're seeing it in real time. Spruce pine meets Armillaria. What's going to happen? According to the textbooks, the spruce pine will die from Armillaria, but let's wait and see. Next to that, another Burkii red cedar. Doing very well. There's a little bit of seasonal needle drop here on the Nico fir. Abies Homolepis. And then here is the Yunnan spruce. This is Picea purpurea, and I've continued to have some problems with the foliage down here at the bottom, but overall the tree seems to be doing good, especially up here at the top, so I guess I'm not that worried about it. And then this is a Japanese holly, Ilex crenata, and the Nordmann fir looking pretty good. Abies nordmanniana, and behind that is a Blackhill spruce, that's Picea glauca densata cultivar. And then here is the red star cultivar of Chamaecyparis thyoides. The top has already started to turn purple, but maybe this colder weather coming up will make the rest of the tree turn purple. And here's the Momi fir, looking great, but you can see just inside There's also a little bit of seasonal needle drop, which is completely normal on the shaded interior. So still looking pretty good on the mummy fir. Here's another Vanderwolf pyramid. And then this is the Taiwan fir, Abies Kawakamii, with, again, a little seasonal needle drop there. Daphne-phyllum macropodum again here, and this one had put on a second push of growth in the late summer, which feels pretty delicate to my touch right now, so I'm guessing some of this is going to be scorched by the winter cold, but these, I don't know, that one's a new one, the old one. The older, more established leaves that were put out in the spring have a much thicker leathery feel, and these are more delicate, so I don't think they ever really hardened off. So I might lose a considerable bit of foliage on this over the course of the winter time, depending on how cold the winter is, but I'm guessing that this will not be damaged. So that's what I'm going to keep an eye on, is the hard established foliage. Here's another incense cedar, Calocedrus decurrens. Still looking good. Another Nordmann fir here. And then I just planted this southern bayberry right here, Myrica heterophylla, in a spot where the old Scotch broom was. Remember that? Cytisus scoparius, I planted one of those. It died over the course of the summer. I don't know why, but this is what's there now. And this is another one of those blueprints, hollies. And back there, tucked in, is the black dragon cultivar of Cryptomeria japonica. And here's another one of those Dahun hollies, which has also put on late season growth right here. I'm guessing in the next couple days this is all going to be brown from cold damage. How is there still a spot on this? Is there another leafhopper lurking around here? I don't see one. Next time I see one of those, I'm going to put that in a video so you can see what I'm talking about. And more turns to gymnanthera, otherwise known as Clayera. For whatever reason, it put out some late season growth all the way down here at the bottom. So this might be scorched. This little bit of growth right there will be scorched, probably. These are much thicker, firmer, leathery, well-established foliage. Should not take any damage. And this is the Euonymus, Chiochovicus, Manhattan Euonymus, and it has a very well-established foliage that probably will not take any damage. You can see it's got the fruits for the fall on there. And this is the Osmanthus sasaba right here. Sent up this long shoot here, and it's got some very delicate, see if we can focus this. There we go. Very delicate new foliage it's put out there. That will probably get scorched as well, but the rest of the tree should be fine. And then here is the dragon spruce, Picea aspirata. Did very well this summer. It didn't do a ton of vertical, but it did have some late season growth right here, similar to what the Lijiang spruce does sometimes. This is midsummer growth from that point right there, but here's the main leader. Those buds do not look that great. We'll see what happens. I don't know much about the dragon spruce yet. It's only been in the ground, I guess, a year or two, so we'll see what it does over the long term. And these are the Niagara cultivars of Thuja occidentalis. And you can see it has some seasonal needle drop as well. Right there, blanketing the ground with those golden colored needles, and you can see they're all in the interior. It loses, I guess, 1 or 2 years previous needles. And then this is the Liberty holly. And it's a hybrid of 3 different Chinese holly species, and luckily no new growth right now. This is all well-established growth. To feel the leaf, you would think it's pretty tough, but it's regularly damaged by the cold. It's one of the least cold-tolerant hollies in the collection, so we'll see what happens this winter. Here's another Dahun holly. This one looks pretty rough. I guess the leafhoppers hit it pretty hard. And back here, the Edith Bogue magnolia, getting pretty huge. This fall, the damage from the Phylosticta fungus has not been that bad so far, fingers crossed. So let's see, maybe it's growing beyond that. For a while there I was really worried that this tree wouldn't make it. And then here's another one of those Euonymus Couchovicus. For whatever reason it put out this shoot from the base here, which will almost certainly be damaged by the cold because it doesn't have time to harden off. And then this is a maybe another one of those Blue Prince or Blue Princess, maybe Blue Maid, I'm not sure. There's another one of those hybrid hollies that's Ilex aquifolium and Ilex rugosa, otherwise known as the Messervey hollies. This one, for whatever reason, has also put on late season growth. That will probably be damaged. And then here is my Ilex vomitoria, Yaupon holly. Looking pretty good. One shoot of late growth there. That will probably be killed. And the whole line of Norway spruces here also doing good. Not much to see. Maybe a little seasonal needle drop on the far interior there. And this is Ilex opaca, American holly. No problems there. Super cold tolerant. Savannah holly right here. No problem there as well. And let's go take a look at this. This is not newly planted. The dog was actually digging around the base of this holly for whatever reason, so I had to dump a bunch of dirt down there, but I don't think it damaged the tree in any way. It was just messing with the pile of dirt around it. This is Ilex coriaceae, gallberry holly. One of my favorites. Actually, I wish that woodlanders would get this back in stock because I really like this. It has such a kind of a typical Florida tropical look to the foliage. But it did very well last winter when it dropped to 4 degrees Fahrenheit, around -15 Celsius. And then here is Ilex spinigera. This is a Persian holly, native to the nation of Iran. Also doing good, no new growth. And then over there is the Nellie Stevens holly. Everyone knows about that. It's everywhere. It doesn't look like it has any late season growth. Here's another sweetback magnolia. This is Magnolia virginiana. I think it may be silver mist or moonglow, one of the two. Looks great. Did a lot of growth this year. Not many fruit seed pods this year, so that's good. If it's not putting out a lot of seed pods, then it's dedicating the tree's energy to the branches and the leaves, which I want. And you can see that's behind another Vanderwolf pyramid, which has the seasonal needle loss. And these loblolly pines also have the seasonal needle loss. We'll take another look at that in a second here. But there's some needle loss as well from the longleaf pine. See, these are turning yellow here, but the tips of the branches and the very top is all nice and green, so it's starting to drop some of those famously long longleaf pine needles. Here is the blue cloak cultivar of white fir, Abies concolor. A little bit of seasonal needle drop there in the interior. And of course this one has trouble with bud loss at the apex, but it's sent up some new candidates for a new leader there. And behind that is my largest incense cedar. Right there, getting really big. Here's pitch pine, Pinus rigida, needle loss as well. And then here, oriental spruce, Picea orientalis. Not much to see there. Let me move back in here and take a look at the Serbian spruce, Picea omorica. Getting a few loblolly needles dropped on it. But overall it looks good. It did the weird thing again where it sprouted some new growth just a little bit. Late season some of the buds. I'm guessing those buds are going to fail over the course of the winter because of that. So we'll see. This tree is not the greatest when it comes to reliable bud retention. So it's just kind of a wait and see every year to see what's actually going to sprout and grow. But so far, I'm doing good in this partial sun location here. You can see the brown from the loblollies back there. We'll get a closer look in a second. Here's another Ilex glabra. This is the densa cultivar. And here's the Pinus parviflora, Japanese white pine with the needle loss that I mentioned for all white pines. And a really big Sweet Bay magnolia again. Not much leaf drop in the fall when it comes to magnolias. I guess they're more of like a springtime. They may sometimes drop the leaves that overwinter. But there's one or two yellow ones here and there. You can see one back there in the background. Going into the winter, this wheel tree, Trochodendron araleioides, looks really good. And I think it's enjoying this mostly shade location, partial shade. And then back here we have coastal dog hobble. This is Leucothoi axillaris. Hasn't really, let's see, maybe there's a little late season growth down there on the ground. This has been fairly cold hardy and low growing, but pretty cold hardy. Now let's take a look at these lobollies here. You can see there's a lot of browning on the needles here on the interior, and that is because lobollies self-prune. They eventually shade out the lower branches and the needles fall off and those branches are dead. So that's happening a lot here in this case, and it's actually a great thing because of this right here. Let me back up far enough to show you. This is my Japanese plum yew, Cephalotaxus harringtonia, which has kind of been rained on by lobolly needles, but I'll pick those off. And this is a shade tolerant species right here, so it's been doing great from the shade of the lobollies, but it's dappled shade, it's partial shade, and you can see now it's getting some direct sunlight on the leaves at certain times of day. And as more and more of that self-pruning happens with the lobollies, more and more light is going to penetrate to the forest floor here, and that's going to allow the huge needles of the plum yew to soak up that light. And it's just a really perfect growing condition. I think if you plant lobolly pines for height and then Japanese plum yew to be the understory conifer, it's a great combination in my opinion, and so far it's working out really well in this spot. You can see how good this one is doing. There's a new leader right there. That's about right. That's what it should be. The growth is a little bit less than the one I showed you earlier because it has had less sunlight, but the color here is really good, super dark green, and I think over time it will speed up as it gets more and more sunlight. Back here, another emerald green, Thuja green giant right there, and you can see the full size of this other Sweet Bay magnolia. A little bit of yellowing leaves there, so maybe there is some seasonal leaf drop. And then over here I have the mountain laurel, Calmia latifolia. This is the minuet cultivar. Dropped a few leaves, nothing major. And that is the Florida anise right there, Elysium floridanum, looking great. Here's a better look at that coastal dog hobble again. This is Leucothoi axillaris. It's kind of a branching, mounding broadleaf evergreen. So it sends up different shoots from the ground, but let's see. I don't know if it's going to grow more from old growth or not, but these leaves are incredibly tough. They're so thick. They're like plastic. And they just do not take damage in the winter, from what I've seen. Here's a better look at that Florida anise again, Elysium floridanum. It likes this pretty shady spot. And even more shade on the Elysium parviflorum back here. And notice when the Elysium parviflorum grows in the shade, it has bigger leaves, and the leaves are not as tightly held to the branches. And it actually grows a lot more vertical. So I learned a lot about the Elysium parviflorum by planting this one in a more shady location. There's another Vanderwolf pyramid there, and this is my red spruce back here in the shade, which should be just fine. Over the summer when I went to Juniper Level Botanic Garden, I saw they had their red spruce Picea rubens planted in the shade as well. So feel pretty good about the location on this, even though I did have some leader loss right here. Don't know why, but this is already turned up and looks like it will be the new leader. So I may actually tie that up there to make sure that does happen. And I don't know if I showed you or not, but I had lost my Pieris japonica here. Not sure why, but I will get rid of that and maybe replace with nothing. There's another Hicks yew there, and then down here, let's check real quick. I've got the Skimmia japonica here. Looks like it's getting ready to bloom, actually. And then here is the Illicium henryi, Chinese Illicium. The dark green leaf color has really come in, and it's looking super healthy. One main leader here, so that's also good. A couple more Elaeagnus trees back here in this area that was redeveloped after I lost all my cryptomerias. And this is not a not one of the parkway cultivars of Prunus laurocerasus, but it is straight species Prunus laurocerasus, so you don't really see this in cultivation at stores and nurseries around here, but I think this is more popular in Europe. But this is, as I said, straight species. I got this from Conifer Kingdom. I don't know if they still have them or not, but I'm going to be curious to see how it does in the winter with the cold. The leaves don't feel that thick, so let's find out. There was a little late season growth here, so that may take some damage here in the near future. There's my Pinus sylvestris, Dona Blue cultivar of Scotch pine, and then a couple Thuja Green Giants back here. There's a very stringy Atlantic white cedar, Chamaecyparis thyoides there. And this is my devilwood tree, Cartrema americana, looking very good. Leaves have all hardened off, no late season growth. And then there is Taxus cuspidata, Japanese yew, no problems there. Have a couple cultivars of English yew here, Taxus baccata with frosted yellow tips. I forgot to show there's another devilwood tree here, another Cartrema americana, which did have some late season growth here at the top. So we'll see how much damage that takes, but the leaves just below are well hardened. Moving over here, this is the Tsuga chinensis, Chinese hemlock. See if I can get a good shot there. Tsuga chinensis has a little bit of seasonal leaf drop in the interior there. Not much. Here's my other Trochodendron Aurelie-Woodies, which gets a little bit more sunlight. And then there's a little seasonal needle drop here on the shortleaf pine, Pinus echinata. And then back here is one of my viburnums, Prague viburnum. And then over here is another Scotch pine, Pinus sylvestris, with some minor needle drop there as well. And just for the sake of completeness, here's the spruce pine, also has seasonal interior needle drop, Pinus glabra. Here's another pyracantha. I'm just looking at this. It really wants to sprout from the base. I'm going to have to come through and trim those suckers right there. But overall, it's been growing crazy fast. Let me see if I can get around and show you the shape of this thing. Kind of scraggly, spindly, way up there. It's like 12 to 15 feet tall. It's crazy how fast and tall the pyracantha grows. And let's see if it can continue to withstand the cold. Now this particular specimen was completely frozen to the ground in December of 2022. So everything you see above ground here is summer of 23, 24, and 25. So 3 summers of growth. And it looks like that. Kind of crazy. This is the Teton cultivar, I believe. And it has more of a, I say yellowish berry. The Yukon Bell has more of a orange berry. And over here is the Florida yew, Taxus floridana. Has been doing very well. I've got it staked up. I'm going to redo that staking right there because it's more leaning. I'm going to try to straighten it up. Hold on. Okay, how about that? I just put it out to the end of that wire there. So now it's a little bit more vertical on the leader. It does not have a good vertical tendency on the Florida yew, so I'm going to have to force it to be a vertical tree. Here's my other Daphne-phyllum macropodum in the ground, and this one has not put on any late season growth. This one's in a more shady location, which is probably ideal for the species. And these leaves are well hardened. I don't expect there to be any winter damage on this one. If there is, I'll be disappointed. Here's another Clara. This is the Bigfoot Clara, and it has put on late season growth that'll probably get scorched there. And here I have my 3 Carl Fuchs Deodar cedars. Can't really see, they're in silhouette. The needles are all folded up because it rained, but those should be fine. And then here's a Berkeyii red cedar here. Spanish fir, nothing to see. And then there's another Florida yew right there. And Agarista populifolia doesn't really have late growth, but it does have some sort of bloom or berry or something there. It's looking pretty good. I'm also impressed with Agarista populifolia. There's a Norway spruce there. Nothing spectacular. Let's move on down. There's another Lycium floridanum right there. And right there is another Black Hills spruce. Okay, looking at that Norway spruce again, this is the one that had the North American native passion fruit growing on it. So let's see if we can take a closer look at those guys. They're still green. And I was reading online that they can even stay on the vine after frost. So I'm going to check back in on those and see if after the frost the vine goes yellow and the fruit starts to ripen. But for now, the fruit is not ripe because it's still green and not at all wrinkled. And back to the foreground here, and you can see there's plenty of seasonal needle loss on the interior of this Virginia pine. And then down below that, we have the Canadian yew, Taxus canadensis. This is the yew that's native to the eastern U.S. Pretty rare in cultivation, and actually the most southern growing specimens of the species are in eastern Tennessee. Here's another oriental spruce here in front of the Virginia pine, and another Serbian spruce, which has done very well this summer. Okay, back here we have the Edith Bogue magnolia in the background there, and another Sweet Bay magnolia in the front. And there is the Japanese umbrella pine, one of the ones that I trimmed this summer. You can see it's very full now, so I feel really good about the trimming. All the energy went into the main trunk here. And these don't really do much. They're very slow growing, and so nothing dramatic there. This is an area that was redeveloped. I've got the temporary tiles covering that. So here's another Dendropanax trifidus there. Tried to put on a little late growth right there that will get scorched. And then here is another Magnolia uruguayensis, which did a little bit more late growth, so I'm not feeling good about that. We'll see, but the main leaves feel relatively tough. Now this is that other large leaf Parkway cultivar of Prunus laurocerasus. These leaves, especially the lower ones, feel really tough. The upper ones, not sure. So we'll see how much damage it takes. And this is a viburnum over here. Let's see if I can get closer. Viburnum odoratissimum. This is a Himalayan viburnum, I believe. The bigger leaves feel kind of tough. There's a lot of new growth here. I'm expecting some significant damage on this viburnum. In contrast, here's the Chinese holly. I'm not expecting any damage there, Ilex chinensis. Although it did do a little bit of late growth here, so these are pretty flexible still, but the main foliage is fairly hard. And there's a Foster holly here just to show you what the foliage looks like up close. That is one of the most cold hardy hollies. And I don't know why my Taxus cuspidata keeps turning yellow here, but hopefully it's not going to be major damage to it. And this is one of my best trees now, actually. This is a Chinese yew. I don't know if I said holly just then. Japanese yew, Taxus cuspidata. Chinese yew right here, Taxus chinensis. I got this from Wilson Brothers a couple years ago, and this thing is amazing. Look at the kind of curvy needles, and it's done a relatively good job of being vertical. Dark green foliage all over, fast growth. Super cool. I can't wait to see what this one looks like when it gets older. If Wilson Brothers ever sells Taxus chinensis again, I might buy another one. And look over here, you can see there's another yellowing Taxus cuspidata there in the foreground, but in the background you can see one of the few remaining emerald green arborvitaes is already turning brown and dying as a result of armillaria. So I'll take that out. And then here's a really big Brookside red cedar. And here's another one of my Japanese plum yews. Back up a little bit so you can see that. Looking good. And these are just Murray cypress over here growing in the background. This one had the top chopped out after a windstorm. It's regrowing. And way up there is another one that's been growing for a while. And here's another look at that Serbian spruce here. Kind of tucked in here behind the Murray cypress, but it hasn't suffered any slower growth as a result of it. So fairly shade tolerant Serbian spruce. Here's my other tiger tail spruce, Picea pullata. I didn't put on a ton of growth this summer up here. Only a couple inches, so may have to make sure it gets plenty of sun and be more aggressive about trimming away around surrounding trees. Here's the Wilson spruce, Picea wilsonii. These berries are not from it. It's because it's next to a Brookside red cedar. Those berries are there, and that's just some mowing debris. But that's what the Wilson spruce looks like. Ignore the berries. And it grew okay this summer. Next to that, Vejar fir. Abies vejarii, native to Mexico. Still having to stake it up. It does not have good apical dominance, but hopefully it will. And there's another one of my Japanese umbrella pines. And then lots of brown on the interior here of this Chamaecyparis thyoides. Atlantic white cedar, that's the common name. And that's because not only does it have these brown cones, but it also has seasonal needle loss every fall. The interior needles turn yellow, so it just keeps basically this season's growth going into the winter. And this is the giant groundsel tree here, Baccharis halimnifolia. As I've said several times, I'm very curious to see how evergreen it will remain. It looks like some of the leaves are turning yellow, but some are not, so let's see. And then here is the Cyrilla arida. This is another cultivar in the, it's the sand TT. This one's pretty rare actually in nature, and actually the Crime Pays But Botany Doesn't channel just did a video that featured this tree in there, or bush I should say, and it survived last winter here. I think some pretty cold temperatures, so let's see what it does this winter. Actually, I can't remember. Maybe I just planted that this spring, so maybe it hasn't overwintered yet. Let's find out. Yeah, I don't think it's gone through a winter, so retraction. This is going to be a big experiment to see what it does. It's supposed to be more cold hardy than Cyrilla racemiflora, so I'm pretty hopeful. Although this one is in a slightly more exposed location. Let's find out. Behind that, another one of those Chinese yews. This one's not quite as spectacular as the other one. I need to stake it up and make this be the main leader here. Here's Picea crassifolia. So I think it's Qinghai spruce maybe is the common name. And it's actually doing pretty well. This is one of the best growing seasons yet, so let's see if this does better in coming years. Here's the longstalk holly, Ilex pedunculosa. Still has the yellow foliage at the top, but the lower foliage is nice and dark green. Feels not that tough, but it's actually one of the more cold tolerant hollies. Behind that, another Bigfoot Clayera. Looks fairly hardened. I think some of this growth is newish, so we'll find out. There is a Nellie Stevens holly. Looks ready for fall. A little bit of new growth there on the side. And then here is the Skipka cultivar of English laurel. It's done a lot of late season growth up here. This is brand new foliage, so that'll probably get scorched. And then here we have the Myrica cerifera, southern wax myrtle. Did a lot of growth this year, and I'm expecting there to be some cold damage this winter from that. And then here we have lots of trunks of the Chinese holly. There's one that's actively putting on new growth right now, Ilex chinensis. That will get scorched. This one has branched again up here, super tall. This tip may get scorched. And this spring I'm going to come back and trim away some of the alternate leaders to just have a single leader, but I was just letting it grow as much as possible this winter for the sake of building out the roots, or sorry, not this winter, this summer. And then I'm going to come back in the spring and whack it back and focus all the growth probably on this one main leader right here. The little Black Hill spruce tucked in there. And let me slide back in here. Here's another incense cedar that had some problems with growth at the tip here. Let's see if I can get a good shot of that. Yeah, for whatever reason, it lost, for some unknown reason, it lost that leader there, and then this is going to have to be the new leader over here on the side, and it looks like it's already rerouting the tree's energy to that area. I don't know what happened to it. The rest of the tree looks amazing, so we'll see. And let me zoom down here to a much smaller specimen. This is the Berberis julianae wintergreen. These started off as incredibly small specimens, so that's actually impressive growth for the year. And I'm curious to see how it's going to do over winter. And then also this much larger Berberis replicata has still been putting on new growth as of right now. You can see there. Let's see if we can focus that. Kind of. Let me try again. There we go. Yeah, that's brand new growth right there. That'll probably get damaged. I used to have a Berberis replicata, and unfortunately my first time planting Berberis replicata was right before the 2022 deep freeze, so that tiny one got killed. So let's see if this does much better. Here's another inkberry holly, Ilex glabra, looking good. And then next to that I have another one of those devilwood trees, Cartrema americana, also looking very good. And then back here I have a Camellia japonica. It's the only camellia I have. And it's in a partial sun, mostly sun location, I would say. So probably not ideal, but it's a good spot for it. And down here is Lionia lucida. And a lot of the last season's growth died and it put on new growth this season. So we'll see how it does. This is also a partial sun location. Here's a little gem magnolia, which hasn't really done too much. This is some later season growth there, but it's basically stopped growing at this point. This is some new growth that will probably get scorched right there. And here's another sweet bay magnolia, which has basically stopped growing. And the D.D. Blanchard magnolia has stopped growing for a while now, so it's ready for winter. And here's another smaller Japanese plum yew. Okay, continuing with the fall mega update. Here is the Picea montagina. That's another Chinese spruce. Looking pretty good. It didn't do a lot this summer. And here's another Chinese species. This is Platycladus orientalis. I have no idea why this is being swarmed by yellow jackets, but I'm going to keep my distance from that. And then here is another holly here. This is a Castle Wall holly. I forget what the constituent species are, but it did pretty good this summer. Looks like a little new growth here now in the fall, and that's probably going to get scorched by the first big freeze. And here's another viburnum, Prague viburnum. Also hasn't really seen a little new growth here recently on some of the side branches, but this is an extremely cold tolerant species, so I'm not expecting damage there. And then here is the Cataliri cultivar of Chinese juniper, Juniperus chinensis there. And here's the Budgerberry blue cultivar of Koyama spruce, Picea koyamae, looking good. And here's another Pyracantha tucked back in here. This is the Yukon Bell that I mentioned with the more orange colored berries. I don't know if you can really tell that. And then here's a pretty big Prunus lusitanica, Portuguese laurel, that has put on a lot of growth this year. Now last winter this was pretty well whacked back by the cold and had some major loss, but let's see what happens this year. This foliage doesn't feel that hardened yet, and this older foliage is a lot thicker and more rubbery, so I'm guessing there's going to be A lot of these bright green tips here are going to get scorched back, frozen. And there's Douglas fir in here, doing good as always. Pseudotsuga menziesii, hanging in there. A little bit more yellow than I would like. We'll see what happens. And then here is the Centennial Girl Holly. And this one also put on some late season growth right there that I'm expecting to be damaged. And this holly here was also frozen back to the ground completely in December 2022. So this is 3 summers of growth here. It's 23, 24, and 25. And it's obviously not that fast of a grower, but still pretty impressive for 3 years. And then here's my largest Ocala anise, Elysium parviflorum. It's had a lot of, I guess, seasonal leaf drop. I never really noticed it before, but I guess it does kind of drop some leaves in the fall. But the rest of the foliage looks fine, as you can see. And you can see the variation in the foliage structure for this one that gets more sun than the other one. It's still a nice dark green. It looks not as dark green because you're seeing the undersides. When it's grown in the sun, the foliage holds more closely to the branches there, as you can see. But it's still doing good. And look, there's another seed pod right there. It's still blooming right now. Here's one of the blooms. I'll show you. That's what they look like. Very small yellow blooms. Relatively inconspicuous, and luckily they don't smell like anything to me. But they're supposed to have sort of a fishy smell. The Florida anise has a stronger smell than the Ocala anise. There's another bloom. But overall, it's looking pretty good. Leaning somewhat. I need to straighten it up. There's another Leyland cypress right there. This one is not dying like the other ones. This one was smaller when the cold hit, and I don't think it was affected by the cold as badly. So that Leyland cypress there, and then this one here, appear to be doing better than the others, so I don't have any immediate plans to remove them right now. And there's a small Norway spruce right here. Doing good, partial shade. And let me walk back in this area here by the Thuja Green Giants. And you can see the interior of the Thuja Green Giant also has some seasonal needle drop there. It's fairly hollow inside. See all that yellowing? That's seasonal, but the exterior foliage is still a nice, vibrant dark green. And here's another small cultivar of Norway spruce, Phenidonensis. Here's some surviving emerald green arbor vitae that is on the edge of the Armillaria zone. This thing is huge, must be 20 feet tall, and it remains to be seen whether or not the Armillaria will get it. This side over here looks dead because this was shaded by a Thuja Green Giant, so it's not abnormal for it to look like that on the interior. The foliage only lives on the outside, as you can see here. Here's a cross section of it. Living foliage on the outside, dead foliage on the interior. That's what they look like on the inside. Here's another large Elaeagnus that I have growing here, and then this is that area that's been redeveloped recently where the Thuja Green Giant died. Of course, I have what I just showed in my dig update video. There's an Eastern Red Cedar, in case you didn't see that. Here's a Chinese holly, Ilex chinensis. Prunus lusitanica there. And then this is Elysium anisatum. I don't know if I showed that. Japanese anise tree. You know how much I love Elysiums. So this one is going to be hopefully more of a tree form and less of a bush. We'll see, but these leaves are pretty tough feeling. I'm not expecting any winter damage on this. And then over here is the forest fir, Abies forestii. Hopefully no winter damage. And there's the Abies recurvata, the men fir. So those two are new in the ground, and I'm hoping they won't be damaged, but we'll find out. I don't think I showed this, but one of my Korean firs just up and died on me this summer for no good reason. And there's what's left of it. I haven't taken it out yet because I've been busy with other projects, but that's one Korean fir down for the count. And then here I have a hybrid Korean fir. This is Korean fir hybridized with subalpine fir. So Abies koreana hybridized with AB's Lasiocarpa. And there's several different hybrids. I think this may be the Inga cultivar or Tanja, not sure which one. But it's looking pretty good. It doesn't grow very fast, but so far it has good vertical tendency. So let's see. Next summer, maybe the summer. Partial shade location here. Looking very good. Here's yet another Plum-U, Cephalotexus Harringtonia. This one also is doing pretty good. There's the leader. And then down here I have a pretty scraggly, another Korean fir, Abies Koreana. This is the Glauca cultivar. And this actually looks better than it did before because this is a new growth this year. New growth over here. I'm not trimming anything. I'm just letting it grow wherever it can. It came to me with this whole section dead when I ordered it from Singing Tree Nursery. Singtree.com, I think is the name. And I ordered it just because I wanted the Glauca cultivar of Abies Koreana. So I'm hopeful that over the years it will straighten up and grow into a normal tree, with this being the leader here. I may actually wire that up a little bit to make it more vertical. It's already turning up on its own, but I'll help it along. And then this is the, notice how the trunk just kind of dies right at that spot there? Let me get a lot closer here. That's the way Korean fir does. It just loses trunk like that. I might trim that off. You can see how many other branches it's lost there. Let's go look at another Korean fir. So here's a big one that I had purchased from Conifer Kingdom a while back, and the top was damaged by cold and started dying. And I went ahead and just cut it off back to this spot here because it just kept progressively dying back. And I'm hoping that it looks a little dead there. I'm hoping that the dying will stop there. If not, it's going to spread to this node here, and all of these branches will start to die as well. From, I don't know, what do you call this? Korean fir decline? It's not really a named phenomenon, but I guess it's failing to thrive. These are grafted on Abies firma, so I'm sure that weakens the tree somewhat, although it's the only way they can survive in the southeast. And also, while I'm in here, there's a little bit of seasonal needle loss on the interior of the Korean fir as well. So that's it for the full collection, and really the main purpose of that really long update, if you're still here, was to kind of set a baseline before the cold winter weather hits this year. And as the winter progresses, we'll check in on specific species to see how they're holding up. But that's really a major part of this evergreen collection experiment, is cold tolerance, in addition to summer tolerance and fungus tolerance and all that. And so we're going to keep a little bit closer tabs this winter to see how all these new species I'm trialing survive, and old ones that have been there, see if they're still surviving. So there you go, there's the full update. Oops, I forgot there was one last tree to look at. The Golden Dawn Redwood. This is the Amber Glow cultivar. Still looking amazing. Look at that yellow color. And this foliage will turn kind of a rusty brown like the regular Dawn Redwood. I just want to show you what it looks like now. Yeah, great fall color. A deciduous conifer. Still green on the interiors there, mostly. But this tree is getting pretty big, as you can see. Trunk's getting large. Fern-like foliage. Amazing species. I'm back again. It's the next day, and I realized that there were a few evergreens that I missed during my massive fall update, so I'm just going to grab those right now. The cold weather is already arriving, and so this is the really big Myrica heterophylla that I already have planted. And so this one has already started to get some red color at the tips there, but it grew a lot this summer, and I'm hopeful that this one will not really take any damage this winter. And here's a closer look at my biggest Nellie Stevens. You can see that new foliage that it pushed late in the season. I'm going to be watching that closely for damage. And this small tree here is the Osmanthus talavei. So it's not that big, not even a foot tall, but it is in a semi-shade location, but gets plenty of sun, I would say. And I'm really curious about that one as well. I think that one's marginal in Zone 7A. And this is my rhododendron, which is blooming right now, strangely enough. But the rhododendron is pretty cold hardy, so I'm expecting this one to make it through no matter what. This one survived -4 back in the year 2022. So should be fine, but those blooms are probably going to get scorched by the cold. And this is Leucothoe fontanesiana here, all the way at the back. This is extreme northern exposure. Not much sun, well, a little bit of morning sun, lots of cold wind. And so this one is also extremely cold hardy. I'm not expecting damage there either. And here is Cunninghamia lanceolata, and you might be wondering, why is there so much grass growing over this thing? Well, I decided to leave that there on purpose to maybe simulate what it would be like in the wild and protect it from the cold a little bit by having the grass grow up around it. And so I'm also not trying to make this a single trunk. I'm letting it do whatever it does as a multi-trunk tree. So it's put up some new growth over the course of the summer. This is old growth from when it arrived there, and there's a little more new growth down here. So I'm just going to take an extremely hands-off approach to the Cunninghamia and see how it does this winter, which is all I can do really, because I took a very hands-on high maintenance approach before and it ended up getting killed. So this is my new strategy with Cunninghamia. And this is another smaller Prunus caroliniana that I didn't show, that has some more growth at the tips here, more delicate growth. I'm expecting this to be scorched. It's very, very fragile, but the harder leaves down below should be fine. I'm probably going to move this one actually and cut away one of these dual leaders to essentially cut the size of the tree in half. And I've got a spot for it over in the Thuja Green Giant redevelopment area where I need the speed and height of the Carolina laurel to screen a gap in my privacy screen. And here's my largest Black-Heel spruce, Picea glauca here. It has a little bit of browning on some of the needles. I don't know why, but most of the needles have this kind of light sea green color, and it's a really tough species of spruce. That's why I have so many of them. Also really easy to find at Lowe's usually. And so white spruce, there you go, looking good. And then over here on this side I have the Japanese needle juniper. This is the Juniperus rigida. It's put on a ton of growth this year, and it has these sort of bluish needles on the upside. There's a band of that glaucous material, and so far has a very upright growing pattern, but that may be a function of the fact that it's in partial sun as opposed to full sun. So I'm just going to let it keep doing what it does. I will have to come through and trim away this dual leader situation happening right there. So I've done very minimal maintenance on it so far. It's basically growing on its own. So we'll see what it does. And now this really is the last tree in the collection. Finally, this is a Picea meyeri, Meyer spruce. Kind of a low, squat, shrubby type thing at this point, but still surviving. It's in partial sun, so let's see how it does. It's really, when it comes to the spruces, the only thing to worry about in the cold is whether or not there's any bud loss. And I don't even know if the bud loss is influenced by the cold or not. But that's really the problem. That's why this is a bush and not a tree, because it just had apical bud loss so often that there aren't really any main leaders left. And that's not because of me trimming it, that's just bud loss. So obviously Meyer spruce is sometimes marketed as an alternative to the Colorado blue spruce, but in my experience, it doesn't work at all in Tennessee. There are many other better options.